Chosen one, can I tell you something that might be the most important thing anyone has said to you in a long time? Not the most comforting, not the most encouraging, not the thing that makes the next hour feel lighter and the next morning feel more possible. The most true, because there is a place beyond comfort, a place past encouragement, past motivation, past every well-intentioned word that has ever temporarily lifted you and then quietly set you back down in the same spot, where the actual transformation lives, where the thing God has been trying to get to in you finally gets there, where the conversation stops being about how you feel and starts being about who you are becoming. And the door to that place is not effort, it is not discipline, it is not a better version of what you've already been doing. The door is honesty, a specific, ruthless, bottom-of-the-well kind of honesty that most people, even the ones who consider themselves spiritually mature, even the ones who have been walking with God for years, have never fully arrived at. Because full honesty with God requires something that feels, in the moment before you do it, almost dangerous. It requires letting Him see the version of you that you've been editing out. Let me describe that version. It is the one that shows up after everyone else is gone, and the performance of having it together is no longer required. The one that sits in the car in the parking lot for 10 minutes before going inside, not because of traffic, but because inside requires a version of you that isn't quite available right now. The one that prays the right words while feeling something underneath them that contradicts every syllable. The one that says, "I trust you, God," while something deeper whispers, "But what if this is just how it is? What if the story I've been believing about my life is more wishful than prophetic? What if I've been holding on to a promise that was never actually spoken?" That version, the unedited one, the one that has been sitting in the waiting room of your spiritual life, while the managed, composed, spiritually presentable version attended every service, spoke every declaration, and performed every act of faith with enough sincerity to be convincing, including, most damagingly, to yourself. God has seen both versions. He has always seen both versions. And here is what He has been patiently, persistently, with extraordinary gentleness trying to tell you. He doesn't want the managed version. He wants the real one. Not because the real one is more deserving, but because the real one is the only one He can actually reach. You cannot transform a performance. You can only transform a person. And the person, the actual, unedited, unmanaged, sometimes doubting, sometimes exhausted, sometimes holding on by something thinner than faith and thicker than nothing, that person is who God has been waiting to meet. Here is the question I need you to sit with. Not answer quickly, not resolve by the end of this message. Actually sit with, carry it through the rest of today, and let it do the work it was designed to do. What are you still not saying to God? Not the prayer requests, not the petitions and intercessions and declarations, the thing underneath all of those, the thing that never quite makes it into the spoken prayer because it feels too raw or too faithless or too close to something you're afraid of naming out loud, even in the privacy of a conversation with the only one who already knows it anyway. The anger you've been converting into resignation because anger felt less spiritually acceptable. The grief you've been reframing as gratitude because the grief has gone on longer than seems reasonable and you're tired of still being in it. The fear, not the surface fear, the deep fear, the one that lives underneath the faith, the one that says, what if I do everything right and it still doesn't come? What if I surrender completely and the life on the other side of that surrender is smaller than the one I surrendered? The disappointment with God that you haven't been able to admit even to yourself, because admitting it feels like a betrayal of everything you believe. But it is there, quiet and persistent and honest in a way that your curated prayers have not been. What is that thing for you? Because that thing, whatever it is, however uncomfortable it is, however much it contradicts the version of faith you've been trying to maintain, that thing is the door. And God has been standing at it, waiting, not to judge what's on the other side of it, to finally meet you there. I want to talk about Jacob, not the Sunday school version, the real one. the full, uncomfortable, human version of a man who spent most of his life operating from a place of fundamental distrust. Jacob was chosen, genuinely, divinely, from before birth chosen. He had the promise. He had the lineage. He had every spiritual credential that should have produced a life of settled, confident faith. Instead, he spent decades managing his relationships, managing his outcomes, manipulating circumstances to ensure the promise arrived on his terms, through his engineering, under his control. Not because he didn't believe God, but because he didn't fully trust to attack more framing for the world. The bright eyes blowing home, bearing from light without a new sea, that it would be enough, that without Jacob's interference, the right thing would actually happen. Sound familiar? And then came the night at the river, alone, everything he'd built, suddenly at risk. The accumulated weight of every managed outcome, every manipulated circumstance, every year of operating from distrust instead of surrender, all of it arriving at once at a crossing point he could not engineer his way through. And a stranger appeared, and Jacob wrestled all night, not politely, not with the composed spiritual posture of a man who has it together, with everything he had, desperate, exhausted, refusing to let go, demanding a blessing from the very encounter that was dismantling him. And here is the moment the entire story turns on. The stranger asked him a question. Not what do you want? Not what do you need? Not what have you done wrong? What is your name? In that culture, in that moment, the name was not a label. It was an identity, a history, a confession. Jacob, the name meant deceiver, the heel grabber, the one who came into the world grasping, who operated from manipulation, who built his entire life on the management of outcomes, because trust felt like exposure, and exposure felt like death. And in that moment, at the river, having wrestled through the entire night, God asked him to say out loud who he had been operating as, not to condemn it, to release it. The confession of the name was the moment the transformation became possible, because you cannot be renamed until you have honestly named what you were. And God renamed him, not after Jacob cleaned himself up, not after Jacob performed sufficient penance for the decades of manipulation. In the moment of honest confession, I am Jacob, I am the grasper, I am the one who did not trust enough to let you work without my interference. In that moment, the new identity was given, Israel, the one who wrestled with God and prevailed, not by winning, by refusing to let go until the blessing came, by being honest enough about who he was, that God could finally reveal who he was becoming. That is your invitation right now, not to win the wrestle, to stay in it honestly enough for the rename to happen. Because here is what God is doing in this specific season of your life, and I need you to receive this, not as encouragement, but as orientation. He is not fixing the circumstances first. He is renaming you first. The circumstances, the breakthrough, the open doors, the clarity, the relationships, the resources, the visible evidence of the life he designed, those will come. They are coming. But they are coming to a person, not to a situation. And the person they are coming to is the renamed one, the one who has been through the honest wrestle, the one who showed up at the river with everything exposed and refused to leave without the blessing. The circumstances are waiting for the identity to settle. The breakthrough is waiting for the person who can carry it without immediately reverting to the old management strategies that worked before but will sabotage what comes next. God is not late on the breakthrough. He is precise on the timing of the rename, and the rename happens in the honest wrestle, not the polished prayer, not the composed declaration, the wrestle, the raw, exhausted, I will not let go of you, even though I don't understand what you're doing, and the night has been long, and I am running out of everything except the refusal to release. Wrestle. That is where you are. That is what this season has been. And the rename, your rename, is closer than it has ever been. Let me tell you what the renamed version of you carries that the managed version never could. The managed version of you could maintain, could endure, could perform faithfulness at a level that looked from the outside like the real thing, could keep the structure intact, the appearance of stability, the functioning of a spiritual life that never fully collapsed. The renamed version of you transforms rooms, not by trying to, not by performing transformation, by carrying something in your actual nature, something forged in the honest wrestle, something that cannot be manufactured or imitated or produced by any amount of effort, that changes the atmosphere of the spaces you enter. The managed version prays and hopes, the renamed version prays and knows. Not with arrogance, with the deep, settled, immovable knowing of someone who has been to the bottom of their own honesty and found God already there, already present, already working, already more faithful than every fear that said he wouldn't be. The managed version carries God's promise as a concept. The renamed version carries God's presence as a reality, and the people around them feel the difference without being able to name it. That is what is coming for you. Not just better circumstances, a different nature. The nature of someone who has been through the honest wrestle and come out the other side, carrying something they could not have been given any other way. And here is the final thing. The thing underneath everything else. The thing that, if it lands where it is aimed, will change not just how you read this message, but how you live the rest of today, and tomorrow, and every day of the season you are stepping into. God has not been distant in this season. He has been closer than he has ever been. The silence felt like distance. The unanswered questions felt like absence. The long stretch of nights where prayer felt like talking to a ceiling, felt like evidence that something had broken in the connection. But the opposite is true. God does his deepest work at the closest range. The surgeon is not far from the patient. The refiner is not removed from the fire. The potter is not at a distance from the clay. His hands are in it, working it, pressing it, shaping it, with a precision and an intimacy that cannot be accomplished from across the room. The silence was not God stepping back. It was God leaning in, closer than comfort allows, closer than the managed version of you could tolerate, because the managed version needs distance to maintain the performance, and God in that proximity would see everything. He wanted to see everything, not to expose you, to know you, fully, without the editing, without the management, without the gap between who you actually are and how you've been presenting. And in this season, this long, pressured, disorienting, foundation-shaking season, he has been closer to the real you than he has ever been to the presented one. You have been more known in this wilderness than in any comfortable season that came before it. And out of that knowing, out of that unguarded, unedited, fully witnessed place, comes the life he always designed. Not the performance of it, the truth of it. Right now, not when you finish reading, not after you've had time to process. Right now, go to the comments and write, "I stop editing. God, meet me here, all of me." The realest prayer you'll pray today. Pray it in public. Make it unavoidable. Let the declaration be the beginning of the honest wrestle you've been circling. If someone came to mind while you read this, the person still managing from a safe distance, still presenting the edited version, still waiting for a breakthrough that is waiting for their honesty, send this to them now. Don't overthink the impulse. That impulse is God. Subscribe, because this series is going somewhere, deeper into the honest places, further into the real conversation, closer to the truth of what this season is actually building in you. Don't miss what comes next. If these words have reached somewhere today that comfort couldn't, the unedited place, the wrestling place, the place where the real person lives, underneath the performance, and if you feel moved to support the ministry carrying this message, I invite you to give from the real place, not obligation. What you sow here reaches the person who is one honest moment away from the rename that changes everything. Your generosity is not a transaction. It is one renamed person investing in another's wrestle. Thank you, beloved. Stay in the wrestle. The remain is coming, and when it arrives, you will finally understand what every hard night was for.